Which is the best petrol engine within the budget of 20 lakh rupees? Well, yes, that's what we're here to find out today, as we have gathered 6 of the finest machines that are available on the market. But before we get going, let's give you a lowdown on why we have picked these cars, how we are going to test them, how these are going to be rated, and ultimately how would we pick a winner out of these 6.
Hi, I'm Karan Singh and I'll be walking you through the contenders that we have with us here today. Now the first car is the Volkswagen Taigun. This is the 1.5 TSI Evo engine with the 7-speed DSG gearbox. Of course, this engine is also available with a manual, but we feel that the extra power from the 1.5 TSI is actually better suited to the snappy DSG. Now, the second car we have today is the Skoda Kushaq. This is here with the 1-litre TSI engine and the 6-speed manual gearbox. Of course, this engine gearbox is also available with the Polo, but of course, the Kushaq is the newer offering from Skoda, which is why it's representing that powertrain. The third car we have with us here today is actually the most powerful in this test. This is the Mahindra XUV700 mix, 200 bhp from that 2-litre petrol engine, and it's here with the automatic transmission. Now, if you come along, I'll show you 2 of the Japanese contenders that we have here with us today. First is the Honda City. This is here with the 1.5-litre iVTEC engine, and it's here with the 6-speed manual gearbox. The second car we have is the Toyota Glanza. Now, this is here with the 1.2-litre K-series engine and the 5-speed manual gearbox. Once again, naturally aspirated, free revving, so we feel that the manual gearbox suits it a little bit more. And the Toyota Glanza actually represents a couple of other cars that share this engine gearbox. So the Swift Desire, as well as the Baleno. All of them have this 1.2-litre K-series engine, and the Toyota Glanza will be representing those as well. Now, the final contender we have with us today is the Hyundai Creta. Now, this is here with the 1.4-litre turbo petrol engine and the 7-speed DCT. Now, this engine is also available with a manual, and it's also available on the Kia Seltos, but we feel that the 1.4-litre turbo petrol is best suited to that 7-speed DCT automatic.
Hi, my name is Dhruv Paliwal, and you must be wondering how exactly are we going to test these cars and engines? Well, it's simple. Everyone here, we've driven these cars and we're going to be ranking them in different categories. As far as the categories are concerned, they are the engine performance, the fitment of purpose, the fuel efficiency, the gearbox, the technology used in the engine, the refinement, and finally, the fun factor. Now, obviously, the engine performance, fitment of purpose, and fuel efficiency, these are really big areas for new car buyers. So we've given them 10 points each. As far as the gearbox, the refinement, the technology, and the fun factor is concerned, we've given them 5 points each. So each car will be ranked by each individual over a total of 50 points. And then we're going to add all these points together, and the car with the best score wins.
Talking about the performance, the mid-range is really nice, but we feel that the 1.5 litre is much more suited for this vehicle, keeping in mind the size and everything, because it's lugging around more than it is capable of. This engine is there in the Polo and it does duty much better because it's a lighter vehicle. But keeping that aside, it has a great power delivery. It is a very rev-happy engine, and the gearbox combination also feels quite alright, although it's a little notchy for my preference.
Especially when compared to the Glanza and the City, like this gearbox is nowhere near as smooth as those cars. The biggest factor about that 1.5 TSI is that it has that cylinder deactivation, which the 1-litre TSI doesn't.
Does not have.
And as soon as the turbo comes on the 1-litre TSI, actually even on the 1.5, the fuel efficiency drops like crazy. So yeah, it's probably going to be tough to get a good fuel efficiency figure. I'm expecting it to be between 11 and 12 kmpl. Probably not more than that. This 1-litre TSI is actually really fun to drive. It was actually my pick when coming into this test. This is the engine gearbox that I voted for. Of course, like the Polo, like we said, is more fun with this. But even the Kushaq, it's a lot of fun to drive this engine with the manual gearbox.
It's very engaging, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're never bored.
Yeah. Now, talking about refinement, when you compare it to cars like the City and the Glanza especially, this engine feels a little gruff at idle, even at speed. You can always hear the engine. It always makes its presence felt, which some of the other cars in this test really don't. They're very silent. So in terms of refinement, I think the 1-litre TSI is not really up to the mark.
To be very honest with you, this engine is more or less flawless because I can't really find a fault with it, in the sense the way it goes, performance is there. It is a very quick car, and this has 150 bhp. It's a light car, and it has typical Volkswagen bits in the way how it drives, how it holds the road. So you have performance everywhere. Then there's a gearbox, which is again a DSG, and I think it has got paddle shifters as well. So driving this car on your favorite bit of road, I think it's quite involving in the sense that the gear shifts are very snappy, and you can use these paddle shifters, engine braking, everything.
Yep.
So the engine and gearbox, I think they are perfectly tuned and they complement each other so well. Now the best part about this drivetrain for me personally is the fact that it has got performance and it's supremely refined. I think it is probably the most refined drivetrain of the lot. And the best part is, of course, the fuel economy. So this has got cylinder deactivation.
Yeah.
So once that kicks in, when you're driving it in the city, it virtually is running on 2 cylinders, and that means you get crazy fuel efficiency numbers. I think we don't have the numbers as yet for fuel efficiency runs that we did, but I think this car is going to be a surprise because I've been driving this car around and I'm getting really good efficiency figures.
I mean, it is so smooth and the engine feels so tractable. It just doesn't offer adequate performance, but I think it makes the Taigun really fun to drive. And the DSG being renowned for its slick gear changes, so that trait has been retained in the car, and I think that the overall experience, the overall driving experience, it's exemplary in my opinion. So this is the 2-liter petrol engine with the automatic, and I think because it has 200 bhp, it has a lot of performance. So you're pretty much never really asking for more power in the XUV700. In fact, we all discussed that this has almost too much power that it could actually do with, maybe a driving mode, an eco driving mode where it's reduced power at certain times. But aside from that, in the city, you're not really using all of the capability of the engine. On the highway, yeah, sure, you use a lot of that 200 bhp, but for the most part, I think it's a very, very strong engine. In the gearbox, this is an incredibly smooth gearbox. You can barely even feel the shifts. In fact, probably aside from the DSG, this is probably the best gearbox that we have at this test.
I will correct you over there, Karan. I think this is even better than a DSG.
It is actually,
for me, it's better than a DSG.
Smooth. It is.
I own a DSG car, but trust me, this gearbox just works, and it works all the time, no matter what you're putting this car through.
This engine is also helped by the fact that it's very refined. In the cabin, we're doing 40 kmph right now. You can, of course, the AC switched off, the radio switched off, so you guys can hear us. But you can barely hear the engine in the cabin. It's very, very refined.
Yeah, that's completely correct. And even when you do start thrashing the car, when you do start going fast, and the engine noise, it does become audible. It's not like a harsh noise that you will not like. It's that nice grunt of a petrol engine that all of us just love to hear. And I think for that purpose, in this department, the engine just checks all the right boxes. The fuel efficiency. I mean, I drove the car for 2 days and I tried my level best. I don't think I've ever tried any harder with any other car to eke out the maximum fuel efficiency I could. And what was being shown to me on the instrument cluster was 6.4, 6.5. Now, honestly, that is just not acceptable.
I mean, it is a very big, very powerful engine, and it's lugging around a big car. So we really don't expect this to do very well in the fuel efficiency department.
Yeah,
but honestly,
I'm waiting for those numbers.
But honestly, that's probably the only department the XUV700 lags.
The thing that I like about this engine is not just the performance it delivers, but how it delivers it. Because no matter what speed you're doing, what kind of on a road surface you're on, you just mash that throttle and the XUV moves forward with urgency.
Yep.
And for a car that size, having a petrol engine, having that kind of grunt, I think that's just awesome.
The mid-range is great. It's very punchy engine. I don't think that it's underpowered, though it could have used a little more if need be. But I think it does the duty quite well.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it could do with more power. I also feel that it has just the right amount, but sometimes I do feel that if I find an empty stretch of road, so I just feel that it should have a bit more. But having said that, the current specs are pretty amazing for a car of this size.
The grunt there is there. It's there.
So the acceleration and the way it picks up speed, it's so nice and tempting. And the fact that, the engine is quite rev happy as well. And it does not become very vocal when you're driving at a higher rev range. So that is really impressive.
This K12N engine of the Glanza pairs beautifully with this smooth 5-speed manual gearbox. And what we get here is a match made in heaven. The gears are short, precise, and absolutely perfect. It's actually what has impressed me the most.
In terms of refinement, the engine scores well. It's certainly not the best, but it's one of those units that likes being pushed to the limit. It remains really smooth throughout the process. Plus, a bonus point for a sweet induction noise. And as I said, it was a Maruti Suzuki engine, so we do expect that the engine will do very well in terms of fuel efficiency as well.
Yes. And plus, we have to mention the start-stop function because it's really good without being disruptive. And I think that will add a little more to its fuel efficiency run, where the others might lack and it might just soar.
What about the fun factor? Arushi, what do you think? Is the Glanza fun to drive for you?
I found it very fun to drive. I found it very engaging.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I find the Glanza to be a really fun car to just throw around the bends also. And that is because the ease with which you can, extract performance out of the Glanza.
This engine, it is a naturally aspirated unit, but it is VTEC and it has a typical VTEC magic. So after around 5000 RPM, it really comes onto its own. And this engine, like I said, it revs all the way up to 7000 RPM. You have performance all the way. This is one of the most addictive powertrains, I think, not just in this test, but probably all the mass market cars that I've ever driven. I think this is one of the best engines. Performance-wise, you are covered because it is a very quick car. You can do crazy speeds and you won't have to shift that much. The gearing is tall. So when we drove it on the track, you could do 150, 160 and you're still in third gear. Coming to the gearbox, well, I think this has probably one of the best, if not the best gearbox in this comparison, because this 6-speeder, well, the way it shifts, it's so precise and it slots in so perfectly. What I like about it, it's also quite driver friendly in the sense it keeps you right on the edge, and the motor is also making those noises. In terms of refinement also, it's not that great in the sense, I think it's because of the insulation. Yeah,
exactly.
The engine, it's not that refined. You can feel it's a little coarse, but I for one, I think I enjoy this part because the way it revs, it's just mad.
But doesn't the fact that it's so engaging and so fun to drive, the fuel efficiency might go for a hit?
I don't think so, because again, the other advantage that the city has, it's a naturally aspirated unit. So even when you're thrashing it, I don't think the fuel efficiency is going to drop like crazy, like it is the case, let's say, in the Creta or even the Kushaq 1 litre. So I think in terms of fuel efficiency also, you're sorted. Overall, I think it's in terms of fun also, in terms of fun factor, this is probably my pick of the lot. I mean, I don't know the final score yet, but this is going to be right at the top for me.
Okay, so now we are in the Creta and this has the 1.4 turbo petrol engine with a dual clutch transmission. So let's start with the positives first. I think in sport mode, this car has phenomenal acceleration. It just goes. But the downside to that is that, when you are in sport mode or even comfort for that matter, driving it at city traffic at crawl speed, it feels a little twitchy and it just wants to rush ahead. So you find yourself just stomping the brake every so often after you've dabbed on the throttle. So I think that could have been a little better.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Dhruv. The throttle response on the Creta is really sensitive and you need to be really careful, especially when you're in the sport mode. But I will say that once you get used to the throttle response, the car is simply joyful to drive, in my opinion.
The amount of money you're paying, I think the performance to price ratio is just bang on with the Creta, because you don't have other cars offering you this kind of performance for this kind of money.
Yeah.
What do you think about the fuel efficiency?
Because it's a turbocharged engine and we discussed sensitive throttle issue, so I am not too optimistic about its fuel efficiency test. I don't think it will fare that well when I look at the competition that we have. But nonetheless, it will be interesting to see how it fares in the economy run, and it will be interesting to see the figures towards the end. The 7-speed DCT of the Creta does sometimes get confused whether it should shift down or just accelerate in the same gear when you're gunning it. But
As you get used to the powertrain, you do not face that issue that much. However, this issue can be dealt with when you switch to the sport mode. That's because in it, the transmission shows a little more urgency. But having said that, in terms of shift speed, the DCT of the Creta is not the fastest gearbox.
And as far as refinement is concerned, okay, let me say that Hyundai cars are generally refined, but we have a bunch of cars here on test, and after having driven all of them, I feel the Creta is somewhere in the middle when it comes to refinement. They've done a good job with insulating the noise that's coming in, right? But the engine overall, I think if you had to really compare it with to everything that else we have on test, is okay. I think okay would be the perfect definition for this engine when it comes to refinement.
In my opinion, if I could sum it up, so it's the jack of all trades. I mean, it's not very exceptional in one aspect, but it does manage all of the aspects very well.
And I think the Creta is very, very quick when it comes to being in a straight line. So that's a big thumbs up, and that's obviously going to add to the fun factor of driving the Creta.
As we are on the lookout to crown the best petrol powertrain there is, we have to factor in the fuel efficiency figures. So in order to find out which one of these has a problematic drinking habit, we did a little test of our own. We took all 6 cars together, filled them up to the absolute brim, and drove them for more than 50 kilometers in a mix of city and highway driving roads to replicate a typical daily driving scenario. At the end of our journey, we filled them up again and took an average of the total distance travelled and the amount of fuel consumed by each car. Now what we have here is the real life fuel efficiency figures of these cars. So stay tuned to find out which of them did the best.
So we are done driving all the cars, and I think we have the final scores which will appear on the screen. It's quite surprising again if you consider the scores, the average of all the scores. It is the Glanza that comes out on top. As in not the Glanza, it's the Maruti Suzuki's 1.2 litre K series engine. But before we conclude this test, I would like to ask each one of my colleagues what is their personal preference, like of all the engines, which is the one that they like the most and probably is their pick of the lot.
So I think for me, in terms of personal choice, it has to be the Taigun. That 1.5 litre TSI engine is so smooth, the DSG gearbox is fantastic, and definitely my pick of the lot.
My personal pick of the lot, since we are talking about the engines, has to be the XUV700. Yes, the fuel efficiency is a pinch in the pocket, but it's just sublime. It's an interesting piece of machinery, and my vote goes to that.
So my top 3 are all strong contenders, but the one car that I would like to drive home is hands down the Honda City. That VTEC engine is just so rev happy. If I find an open stretch of tarmac like this is the car that I would like to be behind the wheel of.
Okay, so if I had to pick my favorite, the one car I would take home, it's the one I'm standing right next to, the XUV700, and that's because I can grab the keys and run away. But the reason here is because I've never appreciated turbo petrol engines, but this is the first car that's actually made me appreciate one. So yeah, XUV700 would be my pick if I didn't have to give it any marks.
As for me, I think these guys have really confused me because earlier I thought the City was my pick because I just absolutely love that VTEC engine. And more importantly than that, I think it feels old school, and the engine, it's so rev happy. It has a red line at 7,000 RPM. So in terms of outright fun, I think that engine and gearbox, it's just flawless. But of course, at the same time, I have to say that the Taigun 1.5 TSI, it is flawless in all departments, including performance, including fitness of purpose, and in terms of fuel economy also, I think it is right at the top. So I'm really torn between these 2 cars, but if I have to take that one engine and gearbox combination, I think it is going to be the Honda City iVTEC with a manual gearbox.
Alright, we've got a little bit of homework for you. If you've driven any of these cars, we'd love to know what you think about them. Here's a rating chart on the screen. See the rating and rate these cars how you see fit. We'd love to know what you think.
So thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching this video. And of course, I know some of you might have liked it. Some of you will have some problems with it. You might not agree with our choice. So let us know in the comment section, and don't also forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
At this point, you must be wondering why we've only picked these 6 particular models for this comparison when there are some other noteworthy contenders out there as well. Well, to start with, we wanted to get the Nissan Kicks 1.3 turbo for this comparison as well, because we think that powertrain is simply phenomenal and offers a great overall package. But unfortunately, the car wasn't available, so we had to drop it out of this list. Another example of a great powertrain is the Renault Kaiga and the Nissan Magnite and their 1-litre turbo CVT gearbox engine combination. That is again a really good powertrain. But again, when we compare the standards of that powertrain to the ones we have here, they do not quite match up in terms of the overall refinement. Likewise, Hyundai's 1-litre turbo powertrain that you find in the Hyundai i20N line, the Grand Night Neos Turbo and the Hyundai Venue is another good example. But again, if we take the overall standards and the overall package that powertrain offers, it does not match up to the engine and gearbox combinations that we have for you in this test today.